All right, folks, I guess we're here with the post-game show. We've got Greg here, and we've got the Yama, Jamie Ueyama. I know we got a bunch of you guys out there as well with your thoughts on chat and everything. And if you have some questions, feel free to post your questions, and we'll get going. Let's start with kind of the overall thoughts here, guys. I mean, you want to talk about a roller coaster, man? This was a crazy game.
Yeah.
But you know what? Here's the thing. This was so important for Marcus Freeman to win this game. I mean, it was just really important for them to win. They've had some kind of negative stuff happen at the end of the year, the closeout on recruiting, and you just needed something positive. And wow, it was just crazy watching this game. I got to give – I mean, this is crazy when you think about, like, Tyler Buckner, right? First of all, you can say what you want about his injuries and things like that, but that kid's a tough kid, man. He took some shots today and just kept bouncing back. And he had a lot of bad stuff happen to him, too. A lot of guys would go in the tank, i.e. Spencer Rattler. But Buckner, you got to give the guy a lot of credit. He stepped up and made a lot of plays when it mattered. And so that's the positive. Of course, there's a lot of negative. With what was going on offensively. And it's crazy when you sit and you think about you score 45 points and you're like, what the heck? That should be a really good performance on offense. And I think for the most part it was, but there was so many head scratching things too, where you're just like, what is going on here? But to me, I really think that this was a huge, huge win for the program. They needed to get something positive going here. And this is a culture program or a culture win where you're building now the Marcus Freeman culture of things, and to come back and play when things look down a number of times. I mean, they essentially played behind the entire game and somehow pulled it out to win. I think that says a lot about the character, the toughness. I thought the team responded really well. There was just a lot of crazy things that happened throughout the game, and the nice thing is they were able to overcome all the craziness and still play from behind and win. So let's start with you, Greg. What do you think? What are your overall thoughts on the game?
So all the emotions, right? Like you just run the gamut. Like originally it was like they're unprepared, didn't come out well, didn't prepare well, not tackling well. Offensively, you come out slow. You understand offensively. And these are just things you're going through, right? Like you think it in your mind. And it's just like, this is what's going on. And then I just kept reminding myself, like, it's a long game. And I kept thinking about the Fiesta Bowl last year, where it's like, look, we thought it was one way and it ended up completely flipping. And so I thought that could happen, right? It could. And I think there's a lot of comments about Reese in the chat, and we're going to talk about him. And obviously the one play call was really bad. But then you go back and look, and it's 558 total yards, 264 on the ground, 294 through the air, 27 first downs. You're at 7 yards per play with a quarterback who hasn't played in 3 months. I mean, that's a good job, right? Like just by the numbers, right? Obviously, you can get into the weeds on like some third down plays and some things. Like there were a lot of things that I didn't really like that were on third down. But there were obviously like a lot of good stuff. They finally hit Lindsey on a deep ball. They got some explosive plays out of Logan Diggs, both on the passing game and in the rushing game. So, at the play call that got Mitchell Evans the game-winning touchdown, it's a great call, right? Completely uncovered. So, and then you look on the other side too. I think our first impression of the defense was it was a total disaster. And before we came on, Jamie said, South Carolina emptied the tank. Like everything that they had, everything that they've ever practiced, they tried it. South Carolina ends up with 352 total yards on 72 plays, 4.9 yards per play. It was just, that ended up being a good performance. I mean, South Carolina didn't really have anything in the second half. So they had the one touchdown that foot's on the line, right? The chalk flies up. The white is all up in the air. So, I think originally we thought they're laying an egg. Turned out to be a really good performance by Notre Dame.
All right, Yama, your thoughts, big boy?
Um, I think it was. I mean, this was like easily the biggest roller coaster. I think this was the most fun
Yeah,
Notre Dame game that
it
I can
was
remember.
fun.
And
Yeah,
obviously, it's more fun for
when you
us
win,
when Notre Dame
sure,
wins.
sure,
So it wouldn't have
especially
been
us.
as fun if
Yes.
that pick six was the start of another momentum for
Oh,
there. But how many times has any team? I don't even know. I said it because Jason Garrett always used to say it on the NBC broadcast all the time. When you block a punt and you get a special teams touchdown and you get a pick six, you don't lose the game very often. Like he always used to say that. And I thought about it. You have 2 pick sixes and you give up a special teams touchdown and you still won the game. Like
yeah.
that doesn't happen. I mean, I don't know if it's ever happened, to be honest. Like, and it only happened because really, like, if you look at the totality of the game, Notre Dame kind of dominated a lot of the game, especially the second half, right?
Oh yeah.
That was the biggest thing. And I think that when you look at when you're missing you're missing your 2 best playmakers, right? Your best playmaker on defense in Foskey and your best playmaker on offense, Michael Mayer, and then Benjamin Morrison goes out.
Yeah.
And like
that was bad. I was like, oh
bad.
boy, here
it
we
was
go.
Bad.
Oh man.
You know what? And then Lewis gave up that one play, but it's like, was that Lewis or what? I mean, who knows, whatever. People just want to just rip on whoever they think is
yeah,
there,
sure.
right? But the point is that there were numerous times too where like Lewis could have ended the game with a pick. DJ Brown had a chance at a pick six. He dropped it. Like Notre Dame could have ended up winning this game by 21 points. Like
should have won the game by 21.
Yeah, they should have, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, it was a wild game. And I think what I came away from this game was I think there's a lot to be excited about for Notre Dame players for next year. There's a lot of guys who did a lot of good stuff. Jordan Botello, top of mind, is one of those guys. And, Jaden Thomas, Logan Diggs. I mean, we've seen them do it all year, but still
that X Watts did a good job in this game.
And
very good job.
Big breakup in the extra round. But then, like, it's even more than just that. It was just like Buckner. I mean, I think most people think Sam Hartman is going to be Notre Dame's quarterback next year. He's probably going to likely transfer to Notre Dame, and Buckner's not going to be the guy. But I mean, Tyler Buckner, he could have folded a million times, like you said. Like there was a lot of there was a lot of bad in there from him. Like I think too, and that's the one thing you have to look at with the game that Reese called. Like Buckner missed some stuff that this game could have looked even way better for Notre Dame.
Oh yeah.
But at the same time, like what he did with his legs, some of the throws he made with guys in his face, some of the arm angle stuff, that's the kind of stuff that really we kind of expected to see from him this year. So you saw some of that inconsistency, but man, the wild stuff was awesome and exciting. And maybe you don't want to go through that every game. I don't think you do want to go through that every game, but I mean, sure was fun for this game.
It was. And again, it's crazy because when you think about the offense, Jamie, as you mentioned, Thomas had a big game and made some nice plays, but obviously Lindsey had a couple big plays, but we didn't see what we thought we'd see from Lorenzo Styles in this game. We didn't see what we thought we'd see with Colsey or Tobias Merriweather. And those guys are going to get more and more plays as time goes on. And so that'll be exciting to watch. My point being, there are a lot of players on Notre Dame's roster who didn't make a play in this game as much that really could take off and should take off next year. And so that's exciting. It's going to suck to lose a guy like Patterson. Hopefully they can find somebody to replace him. I'm pretty confident that they'll be able to replace Lugg and find somebody as good as Lugg. Patterson, we'll see. But Blake and certainly Alt will get better. And so offensively, there's a lot to like. And Buckner can get better. The thing that I like the most about it, the throws and all those types of things are, yes, there's good, yes, there's bad, but just coming back mentally, there's so many quarterbacks who can't handle when stuff goes bad. And And I mean, they blitzed the crap out of that kid, and he made some big throws when they were coming after him. And so that gives me a little bit more confidence in him that he can do this. You know, the accuracy is a concern of mine, and it has been for a long time. We saw some of those issues today, but he made some nice throws as well. He certainly did. So having the legs certainly make a big difference as well. And so, look, if Hartman comes, if your second string quarterback is Tyler Buckner, I'm feeling pretty good about where they're at. You know what I mean? So for next year. So we'll see what happens. Yeah, defensively, I'm still why didn't Jordan Botelho play? Every time he got in, he made plays.
Yeah.
And then they never play him. And then he goes in and he plays great today. Now, he wasn't perfect, but you know, what first time starter plays perfect? Hardly anybody. But he made enough plays that you got to be sitting there as a coach going, hey, we're going to have to live with some of the negative to get the positive. And his positives were very, very good today. And so that gives me some hope. They basically benched Maris. You know, he barely played at all in the second half and some of the first half. And I think that's what they have to look at moving forward. And not just at Marist. I think they need to look at the situation at running or at linebacker and say, look, this is not getting the job done. And I hope that that's what happens when in the offseason is a lot of guys get an opportunity to play. But we saw, you know, when Jalen Sneed's in there and made a couple, I guess, bonehead plays. I didn't see what happened the second one. They didn't really show it.
I'm gonna guess he probably just they didn't show.
He
it,
did something after the play
or something after.
Hit somebody. I mean, he was on the ground. So
and that guy was laying on him, so I could see why you'd get frustrated. But
and to me, that the one they called on, I think it was Joyner after. I can't remember whoever it was that they called in on after that were taking Adam Olaf. That was just they basically called the exact same play. Like it was a makeup call. Like they just did it.
I don't like. Everyone's like, oh, you know, you're laying on him. You're delaying the ball. It was incomplete.
It was incomplete.
They didn't have to go fast. No. It was incomplete.
And he was like holding him down. It wasn't like he was pinned down on him, like doing this, like some guys. I didn't think it was that bad.
No overreaction. So
So if you are Marcus Freeman right now. You're going into the off season. What do you want to do here? Do you to me as a head coach, I look very closely at my staff, and you know, a lot of first year coaches don't like to fire anybody, and I certainly understand why. And I'm not suggesting anybody should be fired, but what I don't think you want to do, and what Kelly did too many times, is remain loyal when something was obviously not working. And you have to look at where you're at each position, and do you feel like you're getting what you want out of the coaching, and are you maximizing the talent? And if not, why? You know, I don't think Marcus Freeman's the kind of guy that's just going to fire somebody like a Saban would. But at the same time, you know, Saban's successful because he's willing to make those tough decisions and not let it get personal. So I don't know, Greg, what do you do if you're Marcus at this point?
I don't know, like there's so much that I don't know about their relationship or how he feels about it. I think that my big takeaway just from this game and just like the whole season, really, it has a little bit to do with this game, but not really. I want Marcus Freeman to be more involved with the defense, period, because that's his thing. That's why he was at Notre Dame. Like, we were all so excited because that he was hired by Notre Dame because he was the chops, right? Like, he had the defensive coordinator, like he was the huge hire, right? The hot name. And I think this year it was a lot more like, I don't want to say CEO, but he wasn't in charge of any one thing. Like, he didn't
he
seem
was definitely
to me,
CEO. Yeah.
Right. So it didn't seem like he had any sort of like, you know, focus. I would like him to focus on the defense, whether that works with Golden or not. I would like to see his fingerprints more on the defense. Cause like Saban, right? Saban or Kirby Smart, like those guys, their fingerprints are all over what they're doing. Like Lincoln Riley's fingerprints are all over the offense, right? Defensive guys, like I think whatever his mind is for defense and what his style is and what his ideas are, like I think he should be more involved, right? And I don't want it to be about this game again, because look, I thought again, they came out in the second half and they did exactly what they needed to do to win the game. Like they went in halftime, made adjustments, and it worked. And so it's not even like I'm not killing Golden, really. It's just that I think that Marcus Freeman, there's more value added for Freeman to get more involved with the defense. I think he can do it, especially now that like he's done it once. He did the first year head coach thing. Put your fingerprints on the defense a lot more. And then as far as Reese, I don't know how, again, it's hard to say like 550 yards of offense. You had Tyler Buckner, who has not played a football game in a really long time, did some crazy stuff. But then, like, as bad as the play call was that resulted in the pick six, as bad as that was, there were some other, like the 3rd and 4 play to Tyree that slip him out of the backfield. That was a really good call.
Great call,
right?
Absolutely.
It's a great call. The throwback to Evans, it's a great call, right? Like, so it's just
that Lindsey touchdown. He had a lot of great.
Those are great calls. I agree with you, and I don't mean to interrupt you, Greg.
No, it's okay.
They were gutsy calls too, because you have a quarterback who hasn't shown a lot of touch up to this point, right? And that throw to Tyree on that 3rd and 4, that's not an easy throw. It looks easy, but that's not an easy throw for a quarterback to make. And it's a touch throw too. I mean, you can't just fire it in there. You have to put some touch on it. So it was gutsy in that regard. And so you got to give him credit in that, and that he had faith in Buckner to do it. But yeah, I agree that, some of the calls were, I don't know. For me, the last call the last drive right before the first half ended, and you run the play with Tyree there, I just didn't like that play call at all, and you lose 7 yards on it. I understand why you want to get Tyree the football, but get him the football on 2nd or 3rd down, right? The most important thing there is to get a positive play on 1st down, so you can keep the football and you have a chance to go score. And that's a chance to have some negative plays as we've saw. But you're trying to catch somebody into doing something that they, as they say, you're going to follow the ball and that type of thing, and follow the way the guards and the tackles are pulling. But a smart player is going to stay home, and that's exactly what happened.
I don't even think that guy was smart. I think that guy's a defensive tackle, and he's normally plays defensive tackle, and he's a defensive end, and he didn't read it right, and he just happened to run right into the play. And that just was just kind of bad luck. But I would agree, Mike. I think that call, I'm fine with it, but that's like a between the 40s call.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's not in the 10 off the drive call.
Especially at the 10, or what, at 13 or whatever it was. So I'm sorry to interrupt you though, Greg. Go ahead and finish your point. I'm sorry.
No, I was kind of finished. And Jamie, I wanted to ask you about a play that I saw. They ran it like 3 times. They motioned the wide receiver. First time I think it was Thomas. Every single time it wasn't even a motion. He just did like the shuffle to the side. And then they ran quarterback counter where they pulled him, and then they pulled, I think it was Evans. So they pulled them around the line of scrimmage, and then they peeled him around. They ran it to Buckner twice, and then he got huge gains. And then on the 3rd one, they gave it to Estimate, and the linebackers had completely vacated.
Yeah.
And there was a huge hole on that one.
Yeah.
And that's like one of those, like, I hadn't seen, obviously they're not going to do that with Pine in the game. But I hadn't seen it either against Marshall or Ohio State. Like, I feel like that was a new one.
That was new.
And so I felt like that was a really good one. I want to put up the super chat by JP. Slam Tommy Reese for the end zone pick, but credit for last touchdown, gutsy. Like, I think that's true, right? Like, I think that's a fair comment. That's kind of where I was coming from, and I wanted to talk to Jamie about that play, because we watched a lot of the games. I don't remember seeing that. So, like, again, that's another wrinkle that they put in for this one. So it's just, I don't know. It's kind of like I always talk a lot about loud misses. Like, a lot of the bad calls were like super loud, right? Like they pick sixes, right? Like you
Yeah.
can't have it, right?
Yeah.
But I thought there was a lot there. They ended up with 264 yards rushing, 5.7 yards per carry. Estime and Diggs ended up with 6.8 yards per carry between the both of them. So what is that? 184 yards on 27 carries for those guys. Buckner 12 carries for 61 yards. I mean, they didn't run the ball early, but they certainly did late, and that's what won them the game.
Yeah, one thing that I've noticed lately, just watching a lot of bowl games, we don't get to watch teams as much. When we're watching our game and stuff, we're kind of focused on that and writing. We'll have it on, but we don't get to really watch teams as much as we do kind of in the bowl thing. The one thing I have noticed, everybody's defensive line is just much bigger than Notre Dame's. I mean, they got a lot of guys that are 330 and even D tackles that are like 310. I think Notre Dame has to start addressing this, and you don't want slow slugs in there, but at the same time, you need some guys who can hold up against the run. And you looked at South Carolina, and obviously they're missing their best defensive lineman. But a lot of those guys were big dudes, man, and they were tough to move. And Notre Dame struggled, at least initially, trying to push them out of the way. Your thoughts on that?
I think that's totally true. And I think it goes back to kind of Mike Elston, really, and how he recruited guys. And he just recruited a lot of undersized defensive tackles.
Yeah.
Like, it's like one of those things where you can take a Jason Admilola, and obviously he was a good player for Notre Dame. But then when you take him and Howard Cross, and then you also have Jacob Lacey, who's also an undersized guy.
Yeah.
And they're all good players, but there's a difference, right? You can't get it's one of those things, and that's one of the things when we look at this kind of class and kind of bring it into this class that they're signed to, all of these guys, even if they're not, 300 right now, they have the frames to be that.
Yeah.
And they just didn't grab a lot of those guys. Or if you go back into it with Elston, you look at the Brandon Tiasums and the kind of sloppy guys that were big but not athletic, right? And they just have really struggled to do that, right? To recruit that. And I think that's just been a problem, for the longest time. And I think it goes back to like how you kind of identify guys. Obviously, there's more of those guys in the South. So it's you got to target those guys and land those guys. It's harder to land them, right? So that means when there is a Gabriel Rubio, that's a guy you got to get. Like, that's a guy you got to get. They got him, but if there's another Gabriel Rubio who's in the Midwest, you got to get that guy too, right? And it's hard because Penn State's going after that guy, and Ohio State's going after that guy, and Michigan's going after that guy too. But that's really kind of what it's about, and why probably they need to get into Jersey more. Maybe some of these Jersey kids can't get in. I don't know, but like, they just haven't had enough of those guys. And I think like Notre Dame's defensive line played a pretty good game, not unexpectedly in this game. Even after missing Foskey, but yeah, they're too small. They're too small up front. Like, that is definitely a problem. And I think that's going to be kind of addressed. But I mean, even think if they didn't have Chris Smith this year, and Chris Smith's not a big guy, but like, they would have been in trouble if they didn't have
no question. He was one of the bigger guys they had, which is crazy when you think about it. So a guy from Harvard's one of the bigger guys you have on your team. And it's definitely something that needs to be addressed. Once again, folks, if you have any questions you'd like to ask us, feel free to put them in the chat there, and Greg will pop those up on the screen. And
here's a comment from Dan Adams. Mike, you weren't here on the pregame show or the preview show yesterday, but his son Emerson was sick and was throwing up, and so fun game to watch. Thanks again to Jamie and Greg for the shout out. Kid is back on his feet today, asking me to show his best friend how he was on TV. So Emerson, glad you're feeling good, hitting and hustling. Nice to see it.
No doubt,
he's feeling better. So
unfortunately, you're dealing with it though.
we were, we'll see, man. Who knows with these kids, right? Like they just sometimes they just start throwing up, right? They start vomiting, and no one knows why. So we'll see.
Well, I don't know. It's crazy when you sit here and you're at 9-4 and you're saying, was this a good season? Was it? I mean, I don't know. What are your thoughts, Jamie? Good season?
I mean, I think it was. I mean, there were good moments, but I mean, you can't get away from losing to Marshall and losing to Stanford. Like losing to USC and Caleb Williams, losing to Ohio State on the road to open the season. Those are games like, I mean, it sucks to lose them, but those are games that, like, you know, a lot of teams are going to lose, right? I mean, it's really inexcusable that they lost to Stanford is the main one. I mean, the Marshall, if you think about it, was a much better team than Stanford. It still shouldn't be a game they lost, but still, like, that Stanford loss, that makes it to me, even with all the good that they did, you can't count it as a good season, but you can count things during the season that you can build on. And that's the way I kind of look at the overall season. So, like, that Clemson win, that's something you can build on, right?
Yeah.
Starting 0-2, being 3-3, and then turning it around and ending up 9-4, that's something you can build on. Being in this game where you're down 14 points, they're throwing, the kitchen sink at you. Your defense is tired. They're struggling. Your offense, your quarterback just throws a pick six. Everything's looking bad. And you come back and dominate the second half. And really, if it wasn't for that pick six, like, they would have just absolutely killed them in the second half. So those are things you can build on. And so I think from that perspective, it's like there was a lot of good, but you can't call it a good. I mean, that's the reality of Notre Dame. You can't call 9-4 a good season at Notre Dame.
I agree. And, the thing that was alarming to me in this game was I don't think any of us felt like the team played well against USC. And I don't think that they prepared well. I don't think that they it just was not the same team. And when they started this game, it was the here we go again mentality. And I think it was really important to finish this game like they did to get that culture together. And so that, to me, I think is a big positive. But, Greg, your thoughts? What a good season? Okay. I
think good is, I mean, I kind of agree with Jamie just in a vacuum, right? Like 9-4, we wouldn't have, like, in the preseason, we wouldn't have called that good, So I guess there's that piece. I do think it was useful, though. I think it was a useful season in that Marcus Freeman, it would have been I feel like it would have been less useful, I guess, if the losses, like if they had beaten Marshall and beaten Stanford and lost to Clemson and then lost to, like, I don't know, BYU or something, it would have been like, sure, like, you beat those teams, but they stink, right? Who cares? Like, I want to see that there is the upside, because that was the point. Like, that was the whole point of Marcus Freeman, is like, is there the upside there? That's something that can go beyond Brian Kelly. And the fact that they did beat Clemson, the fact that they did end the season the way they did, when, you go to North Carolina, like, you're 1-2, look terrible. You go beat North Carolina, like Drew Pine beat Drake May. Yeah. Not even did he just beat Drake May, he beat him in a shootout. Like, they scored a bunch of points, right? Like, that happened. They went and beat Drake May. Like, they beat Jaron Hall, right? And at the time, like, it looked like, how many times did we say on the show, Jamie, like, this could be 6-6, right? Like, this could be really not good. And so I think the fact that he learned how to do that, he got the team bought in. And I think this game is kind of like a perfect microcosm of his growth as a coach, is that it started poorly. Everyone stayed in it. 21-7. South Carolina fans were going crazy. Like, they were into it, right? Like, that was a really good atmosphere. It was a really good atmosphere.
Yeah.
They were into it.
Oh yeah.
And Buckner has just,
and defense got loud later.
They did, but it's like it was that good bowl game kind of like it was that.
It was just a damn fun game.
Right. It was fun
game. Yeah.
Before I keep going on the point, that was a college football game.
Yeah, it was.
That's what that
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
Like that was a college football game, right?
It reminded me
Games-
of a fun high school football playoff
yeah,
game.
just
That's
like
what it
games
reminded
Yeah.
me of. Yeah.
that
Yeah.
you remember. It like meant nothing, but it was a great game for a great game's sake, you know? And so like that
It's a
is
good
like,
showcase too, because what it is Notre Dame doesn't get a lot of those kind of back and forth games. You know what I mean? Where you're up and you're down and you're up, and they don't get those kind of games, and
Yeah.
and so when you win those kind of games, it's much more exciting to everybody, not just Notre Dame fans, but
Yeah.
recruits and people paying
Right.
attention. It
Right.
really is, and it was. That's why I think it was so important to win that game. So
Right.
like,
And it was just like a good time. And so then they come back and they find a way to come back. They give up the fake field goal touchdown, right? They come back in that situation, and then you throw the terrible pick six. Like you're going to go up, like you're going to take control of the game. You throw a pick six, you lose it, and what happens? They drive right down the field again and score the game winner, and then they put it away on defense. Like that is the opposite of what we saw last year in his first game against Oklahoma State. It's the opposite thing where it's like they look great and then they just completely folded. They could have folded in this game and they didn't. And I think they could have folded this season and they didn't. And so for me, like, is it a good season? If someone says no, I can go along with that. Like Jamie says no, I don't really have like a rebuttal. But I see it as a useful year and something that Marcus Freeman can build on and go on, next year and kind of grow from this, right? And I think that's kind of how I see it. It was useful. It wasn't a nothing year, it wasn't a year where it's like we didn't find out anything, we didn't play good in a good big game. It was just like a meh. Like there were some real moments last year, so that's kind of how I view the season at this point.
I agree, and I think Marcus Freeman learned a lot about how to be a head coach in this year, and he won't probably make as many mistakes. I didn't think he made a ton of mistakes, coaching wise, especially like game day stuff. He seemed to handle most of that pretty well. I think it's just kind of how you prepare your team week to week, how you get them up, those types of things. How do you push all the right buttons? And I think he's learning that. And so that's a good thing. I think it was a good learning experience, and now we'll just see what happens moving forward. Move forward to spring ball, guys, and 2023. Let's start with you, Yama. What are you most concerned about heading into spring ball when you look at the roster, when you look at who's leaving, who's returning? What are your concerns at this point?
I think guard. I think you're losing Patterson, you're losing Lugg, and as much as I think like Lugg is, obviously a guy replaceable, and I think they'd be able to get somebody else who play at that level, but you have to get somebody who's going to play at that same level that Patterson did, who played at a pretty high level, even though he was hurt for pretty much the whole year. And also the leadership aspect of it, right? Now, all of a sudden, guys like Joe Alt and Blake Fisher and these guys, Zeke Corral, they have to be leaders, right? They have to do that. So that's something that I think offensive line, that wide receiver, even though you saw plays, from the receivers in this game, it wasn't like a Colsey breakout game. Thomas had a good game. Certainly like Mitchell Evans had a good game, but you still need to find, does Notre Dame have a number one wide receiver on the roster? Do they have two guys that can maybe do that? That to me is the most concerning things on offense. And I'm looking forward to seeing because I think, running back wise, you feel great. You feel really good there. And I don't think Jadarian Price is going to be available for whatever, but he's a guy who's going to be, hopefully there for the season and all that too. On defense, it really comes down to like, defensive tackle, like nose. Can Rubio be a consistent guy there? I'll tell you what, I feel a lot better about Viper after this. I thought Junior Tuihalamaka looked good at Viper in this.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
And I was surprised.
There was a finishing aspect, but beyond that, he looked good.
And I think there's a lot of like, I'm excited to see Snead and Burnham and all these guys and how they develop and all this kind of stuff too at linebacker. But like, is it going to be like Jack Kaiser and JD Bertrand at linebacker next year? Is it going to be better? Like that's a huge if. And then safety to me is a massive one. It's a massive one. I think X Watts you feel really good about. I think Ramon Henderson had a pretty good game in this game too. But still, you need more bodies there. You need more depth. You need somebody to push there, because I don't think you can just base off like Ramon Henderson and just say, yeah, you feel good about him being a starter next year.
You need somebody to make a play out of that position. X Watts really the only guy all year who's really kind of made a couple plays out of that position.
Yeah.
And I mean, literally nobody else has really, you have a guy like DJ Brown who has played serviceable, didn't make a lot of bonehead plays, but that's not what you want. You want somebody to make some plays.
He's limited.
Yeah. And they gotta find somebody there. For me, linebacker, you got to make some tough decisions there. And if guys got to sit, that's just the way it is. And if that means some leadership has to sit, that's just the way it is. You got to do what's best for your team now. And it may not be popular, but again, this is what a head coach has to do. And as Greg mentioned, this is where the head coach, who's a defensive-minded coach, needs to step in. And if it's a situation where Al Golden says, well, you know what, I'm not real happy with you stepping in, well, then maybe Al Golden isn't your guy. Maybe you need to find somebody else. You have to look at you have to find people who are willing to take some sort of direction and advice. And I'm not saying that Al Golden is against that or won't do that. I don't know. But my point being, if he is, then I think you need to figure out what you're doing there. And you got to make sure that you're doing the best thing for the team. And, like I said, Jordan Botelho, perfect example of a guy who should have been playing, wasn't playing. And, I don't like this seniority, this, we don't want to.
I don't know if it was that though, Mike. I think it was probably like they probably let's face it. To me, he's a gamer, and they don't like gamers, and most coaches don't like gamers. But when a guy goes out and produces, he's got to play.
Marcus Freeman said there are no gamers. That's what he said that. So.
He's making a huge mistake.
I'm making a point to Jamie.
Yeah, no, that is true. Like he said that, right? But I think it's just obvious that Botelho, he might be a guy who screws up in practice. He might be a guy who, whatever, you ask him the questions in the meeting room, he doesn't know what's going on. But he can play ball.
Yeah.
He can play ball. I think it's and now, I mean, obviously they didn't have a choice in this game. And also we don't know that he didn't turn things around. Like a lot of guys that happens for him, right? But he finished the season, 6.5 tackles for loss in the last 6 games. The dude can play.
Yeah.
He can play. I mean, I'm really excited to see. He's like top of my list of guys that I'm excited to kind of see next year.
I'm concerned about interior D-line myself. I'm really concerned about that. We saw Riley kind of step up and make a play at the end of the game. That's important, but just was very, very inconsistent this year. I think Howard Cross, we know what we can get, but behind that, we really don't know with Rubio. Just don't really know the consistency of what we're going to get there. And we got to hope Tyson Ford steps up. We got to hope that, maybe Anye, somebody steps up because they need some guys. They need some bodies in there. Hopefully Heinisch will be a legit 290 and can give you something. We know he's going to be a tough SOB no matter what. And so maybe he can step in there and give us something, but I don't know. Greg, your thoughts?
I wanted to just point out, so people are bringing up Shane Beamer in the chat. He said he's complaining about the refs. He said they were making it about them at the end of the first half. I don't understand. Like, it's a blindside block. Like, you watch football now, everyone knows you just wall the guy off. You don't light him up. You just can't do it.
You
can actually really hurt a dude.
Yeah,
right. That's the whole point. It's like offense gets every advantage and all you have to do is not do what that guy did, it's a penalty. I mean, it's a penalty. They're lucky didn't call him for targeting, frankly. And not just that, it's a block in the back as well. So I don't know. There's that piece. But I wanted to get you guys. What's the Buckner take? Like, what is the take? I mean, we got to see a lot, right? Like there was, everyone said going into the game. I said it. Jamie said it. Like, what is Tyler Buckner really, right? And I think we saw a lot of why they lost against Marshall, right? Like kind of just some crazy bad reads, poor decisions,
just bad
poor throws. Like, yeah, just like bad throws.
Without the playmaking.
And then you have, that's why you want this guy.
That's why you recruited him. Yeah.
That's why you recruited him, because he made a couple of like the throw to Lindsey is a really good throw. Like he's getting hit and he's kind of falling left. That's a really good throw that he made. They can get the ball outside. Like Jamie, we talked about like some of the things. Can they turn on some of the things that weren't turned on with Pine? And they did. There was a play in the first half to Thomas where they motioned him out and he pulls it and he does the sidearm thing and it's like a 12-yard gain or whatever, right? And so you have some of that stuff. There's the running game aspect. Scores 5 total touchdowns in the game, 2 rushing, 3 passing. So it's 19 to 34. And here's the other part too. 19 to 34 for 294 yards passing, right? 56%, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. You know who has a lot of stat lines that are just like that?
Yeah, I know.
You know who does?
Hartman.
Sam Hartman, baby.
That's
so
right.
I don't know. It's
I would say though, okay, because not to step on something I'm writing about Sam Hartman if he ends up committing to Notre Dame, but if you look at the Sam Hartman multiple interception games, every one of those games, he's got to throw it like 50 times because they can't run the ball at all. So
yeah, he's a guy that
it is different. I mean,
he had to force the ball because they weren't going anywhere if he didn't,
And some of his ones are like deep shots that he probably shouldn't take, but you can kind of live with because he's makes enough of those deep throws to do with. So I think it's a little bit different, but that it is a fair point because you could compare some stat lines. I mean, I think it's, I mean, you can't judge him just based on this one game, just like you definitely couldn't judge him on those other games, which is why you need to see more. But you definitely saw all the good in this game, enough good in this game to be like,
I agree.
If let's say Notre Dame doesn't get Sam Hartman and they end up with somebody else that is going to maybe compete for the job, but whatever. I think, it's not that you would say you would feel like super confident that like Buckner is going to be a star or anything like that, but you definitely have more faith that he has a chance to be after today. And that's kind of what this game was about that's what I thought of after today, because like he made, I think, if you listen to what, the announcers who were calling the game, and it's an SEC crew, right? So they call for the SEC network. So yeah, it's going to be a little slighted towards South Carolina. I get that. And guess what? They were winning the game big at the beginning. So obviously there was that, but in saying that, I mean, those guys were really praising Buckner, like the entire game and they should have been, because he was getting rocked. He was getting rocked. Yeah. And the number one thing I think that, maybe not the number one thing, but near the top of the list of things that you want from quarterback, you're like, oh, this guy's going to take a hit and make a play. Like, he's going to get back up, or he's going to make a bad decision and come back. Right. And I thought one of the things with Pine, and it wasn't just the Cal game, with some of the other games too, is when he was off, it was like really in the tank. It was like, wow, this is really, but when he was good, he was great. Right?
Yeah, and he couldn't get it back either.
He couldn't
you know
get
what
it
I mean?
back if it was like that.
If it was bad, it was just bad the entire game.
And Buckner seemed to get it back in this game.
Here's my thought on it. You can be a 56% passer if you complete the right 56% of the plays, right? I know that sounds crazy, but like Jack Cohn, when you'd watch Jack Cohn, he'd end up like 63, 64%, but he wouldn't make the critical plays on third down, right? The plays you have to make to finish the drive or to convert and that type of thing and keep you going. And, I'm not trying to slam Jack Cohn, but he was just not like, if you look at that Oklahoma State game, I mean, that was totally that situation where he looked good most of the time until he really needed to make a play and he just couldn't make it.
Yeah.
With Buckner in this game, he showed that he could make those plays. I mean, he was actually pretty good on third down. At one point, I think he was 4 or 5, so he was actually pretty good. And if you can make the plays when it matters, then you can be a 56% passer. But I still have an issue with the accuracy because
it is a thing. Yeah,
it is. And where it's really going to be a problem, you can beat Boston College being a 56% passer. You can't beat Georgia. And if that's where you're trying to go, you need somebody who can do that. And we have to remember this is essentially what his third, fourth start, whatever it is. He's probably going to get better. At least you hope he will. And hopefully the accuracy will improve a little bit and he'll become a much better player. But to me, the thing that stood out the most to me was just hanging in there, man, just taking the beating that he took and not letting it get him down. I mean, anybody who throws 2 pick sixes, their head is hanging, right? And he comes back and he does exactly what he has to do. To me, that's a winner, right? That's a guy that I want to get behind. And I think that's going to be, hopefully this will be a confidence builder. And I don't think we would have saw that with Pine. If Pine would have done that, we would have not seen him bounce back and do the things that Buckner did. So, thumbs up for me on it. I'm excited about, let's see where he goes. Maybe he'll get better. Maybe he'll get a lot better. We'll just have to see.
Buckner was 11, or no, I shouldn't say Buckner. The team was 11 of 19 on third down, and South Carolina was
12 of 20 if you count the fourth down too.
Yeah.
Oh, also
yeah.
those quarterback sneaks.
Yeah.
The one it was like a 3-yarder. I was like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
And the other one where it was obvious that he was going to get stuffed and he went around those are just really savage.
I saw it and I said and I thought to myself, oh man, like they're really pinching. It would be great if he just took it and ran.
Yeah.
And I'd be darned if he just didn't do it.
Did it.
He just saw
I
exactly.
don't think anybody else knew he was going to do that.
No way. He just got it and ran straight.
Just saw where it was. Yep.
That was a really good play by him. Look,
heads up play. Yeah.
You know what? Like, hey man, it doesn't matter. At some point, it doesn't matter how it looks. Just go win.
Shouldn't have been an issue anyway. Estimate got the first down. That was a horrible spot. Just horrible.
Spot, yeah.
I'm like, what are you doing? I mean, it should have never been an issue, period. Anyway, I'm sorry. I was just getting all fired up. I mean, we can't have a show if I don't get fired up at least once, right?
Well, they lose, then they go and lose Morrison in the second half. So now you're down like both your starting corners.
Clarence did a nice job in the second half, made
a
couple nice plays. Yeah.
I thought that the touchdown, you brought it up, Jamie. First of all, again, the foot's on the line. The white came up. It was clear as day, right? I thought on that play, it's one of those where they're both kind of doing the wrong thing. Like they roll right. Watts is supposed to be on the half. They roll to Watts' left. So he basically just says, I'm not even going to worry about this. And then he stops. And then it's like, oh, I need to get over there.
Yeah.
And then Clarence Lewis doesn't sink enough. But where that ball is put, if they both did it right, it might be the same
matter. Yeah.
It was a really good throw. I mean, in terms of like,
it was definitely a ball that like Spencer Rattler's like one of 5 guys in the country who would have had the guts to throw that and then actually make
and the ability
throw.
Yeah.
Of course, he's also the guy that feels the breath of a defensive lineman and throws it straight into the ground too.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's why Spencer Rattler.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, he hurt them on that 1 3rd down when they had him in the flat and he throws it in the ground.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't
Could
have
have been
that,
an easy
right?
conversion.
Yeah, it would have been an easy conversion. They could have moved the ball. Instead, you're punting, and Notre Dame is, going down to take the lead.
Got any questions or anything? Or
there's just a lot of comments.
Yeah.
I guess here's a question. Do you think there's a chance Buckner goes? Patrick Fagan. Do you think there's a chance that Buckner enters the portal?
I'm gonna guess no. I mean, I guess there's a small chance.
If I played like that, I'd stick around. You got to figure that the coach has got to think that, you have a chance to be a starter. I mean, if I'm Tommy Rees, I'd give the kid a chance. I thought it was a gutsy performance, and he did enough, I think, where, I wouldn't guarantee it to anybody. And if that means you lose Hartman, I don't know. I'd hate to see that happen, but I'd certainly give Buckner a shot. I really would. He did enough good things today to where I think he earned a shot myself.
Yeah.
What I would say to him, or not to him, but just generally speaking, like, there is a history of Notre Dame quarterbacks. If you just hang around and wait for your chance, you will get your chance. It will come to you, right? It happened for Ian Book. It happened for John Kaiser, right? Like, he just hung in there. He was behind Zaire and he was behind Golson. The next thing you know, he's the guy, right? And so you just never know. Like, if you are the guy next in line, your chance comes. It's just like Ian Book did it, and Tommy Rees,
Kevin McDougal,
Kevin McDougal,
Greg Blunt brings it up here.
Yeah, Tommy Rees.
And obviously that was a way different era, but I mean, Joe Montana, he's the classic one, right? Like, he was like 7th string when he was a freshman. I think the one thing about why Hartman is, I think, and whatever, I'll just say, because some of these people are like, of course you take Hartman. Yeah, of course you take Hartman.
Yeah, it's not a question.
No one is trying to question that.
Hartman, and I also, I want to give Buckner his due. He was the MVP of this game. He was voted the MVP. He played in the game. Like, he should be the focus of this.
They could have done what they did with Drew Pine. There's no
doubt.
Right.
No question.
But I think one of the things with Hartman is it's like 100% his last year. So
yes. Yeah.
There is that incentive for, well, one, Buckner's sister is coming to Notre Dame. I believe she's gonna be a soccer player, right? So there's that, like, the family kind of connection and stuff too. Also, he's a guy who probably, I'm gonna guess, has a chance to graduate within 3 years. So there's also that, and he can transfer if it doesn't work out in that sense too. But when a guy comes in, and even if you lose a job, and then another guy, like, what good does it do him to try to find something? Is he going to find a place that is as good as Notre Dame, or whether or not, he might set himself up to be the quarterback of a roster that's going to be way better than it is now. Yeah. Right. So, and because Hartman can only stay for a year. Right. So, and that's why I think too, the one thing with Hudson Card is you really had to kind of believe that Hudson Card was going to be the guy, because you're taking on a guy that's got whatever 2 or 3 years eligibility. So it's a different scenario with him. I'm going to guess he sticks around, and I'm going to guess they give him a shot to win the job too, even if it's Hartman or whatever. I mean, I would expect Hartman to still win it, but yeah.
Here's a question from Michael Bowler. Is it wildly different the way the O-line protects, or rather doesn't, for Buckner, assuming a big part is the way Buckner is calling the line play? What do you guys think?
One, I don't think there's not a big difference. I think the biggest thing in this game was Jordan Birch was a man in this game. He was awesome. I mean, he was their best defensive lineman all year, so it's not like surprising. He's like a 5-star kid. So, I mean, how many people have we seen like beat Joe Alt straight up one-on-one? Not many this year, right? And he was the guy, he gave all he could handle. It wasn't like Alt did a bad job, but he got beat a couple times, right? So there's that. And then I think
44 shows what it's like when you have a good linebacker. You know what I mean?
Oh, he's like really good. And that's like another kid who's like a 6th-year kid who's like really
tremendous player. Yes.
Yeah, he was very good in this game.
He caused all kinds of problems. Yes.
Yeah. And So I think I want to give like we should say South Carolina's coaching staff, I think
Great
did a
job.
pretty great job in this
Yeah.
game.
Yeah, they
And I
did.
think especially too with how they kind of attacked protections and stuff on third down. So there's a lot of times too where like they point out Stinchcomb, who was doing the game. You know, he's a former Georgia offensive lineman, was a first round pick and played for the Saints and whatnot. Like he talked about, like the threat was inside, so Alt's got to step inside there, and that leaves the edge, and that means it's on the quarterback. That means the ball's got to get out quick, but you're probably going to get hit, you know? And that's kind of what was happening in that. And so they did a good job of attacking protections. South Carolina did a good job of attacking protection. I think that was part of it. And then the other part was, I mean, South Carolina's got some dudes on the defensive line. I think if South Carolina's other two guys, they didn't opt out, I mean, they could have made it a lot harder for Notre Dame.
Yeah. Question from Adrian DeVore. Any chance Lindsey stays?
I don't think so. I mean, it seems like he wants to kind of move on, and it didn't even sound like he wanted to play football after this. You know, maybe he comes back or whatever. Maybe they can talk him into it, but it seemed like he was pretty set on he wants to bounce. So,
yeah, I would guess like, you know, he might try to give. I'm sure he'll try to work out a pro day and all that kind of stuff, and you know, see if he can get a shot somewhere. But I don't think he's a guy who's set up pretty well if he doesn't football doesn't work out for him. And he's kind of been open about it, that he's like, I'm fine if it doesn't work out. So and teams normally don't like guys, they want guys who are desperate to make NFL teams too. So it's probably going to be a knock against them in the scouting process.
Corey Flynn asks, what do you guys think about scrapping the indisputable evidence rule? Just go with logic. White paint powder flying up on the touchdown is logic. Is out of bounds? Well, I mean, to me, it's indisputable that the white.
It was the camera, though. You know what I mean?
Right.
I was joking.
Blurry.
It was a bad picture, and I was joking with my 4 idiots buddies. I'm like, I almost guarantee you, ESPN blurred that on purpose. You know what I mean? So I've just never seen a camera picture of anything that was that blurry. You know what I mean? How the heck does that happen? But it was, I just think because it was blurry, they couldn't say it was indisputable, because you just could not absolutely see it. Even though we see what looks like white flowing up there, we just don't know. So,
there was some rumors going around. I saw them on Twitter too about and one of the Aidens transferring. Do we know if it's Kiana Ina?
Yeah, that's who they're talking about.
Okay, so it's not Gobira.
No, it's
nothing
Kiana
that we've
Ina.
heard.
Kiana Ina. So, and I think there's a solid chance that he may be bouncing. Yes, I don't know that for a fact, but I think that there's a solid chance that could happen.
Okay, Jamie, someone had a question. I didn't star it, so I apologize if you're still listening and you asked the question. I want to say it was Michael. I think one of the Michaels. He asked a question about whether or not you would qualify this as magnificent.
Oh,
the Buckner performance. So was it magnificent? And I think we could say we understand why Marcus Freeman would say it at this point.
Yes.
But would you say it was magnificent?
No, because of the pick. But he had some.
I was ready to pounce on you, Yama.
He had some magnificent moments.
It's
kind of like this Notre Dame season. There's some great moments, stuff you can build off of.
But there's a lot of crap too, you know.
Like even at the beginning of the game when it's like to start the game, and I understand it's a start. He's rusty, whatever. He's probably nervous, whatever. But like, you know, the throw to Styles, the throw to Thomas, or those first couple throws, like those were just, they called the drops, but they weren't drops.
Bad throws.
Those weren't good throws. And if you put them on, I mean, those are chance for good plays, right? So, So I mean, I couldn't call it magnificent, but I mean, we saw today the stuff that got people excited about Tyler Buckner. And I think that was the most important thing.
We saw a lot of good. We saw a lot of bad. And, until we see consistency, I think it's way too early to say. We've seen Drew Pine look fantastic, and then the very next game just look completely awful. So consistency is the thing, and I want to see it, and I hope we do see it. But I don't know. I do think that he's earned the right to at least compete for the job. Even if Hartman comes in, I think he's earned that right. Yeah. And I'm going to guess he'll at least be given a shot at it, and we'll see what happens. What'll be interesting to see what happens with Steve Angeli. That will be the interesting thing. And, because if you're Angeli at this point and Buckner played like that, when is your opportunity coming? And I don't know. We'll see. My guess is Angeli's here for the spring too, but if you're going to end up with 3 quarterbacks in spring, you're not going to get a whole lot of reps as a third string quarterback, and especially if you're trying to work in a Hartman.
Yes.
Yeah. Oof. Especially if if you are trying to get Hartman up to speed on the offense, you know what I mean?
I think he has to come for Minchie, though. I think, sorry to interrupt, Mike, but I think Minchie, it's important that he's an early enrollee because Carr's going to be an early enrollee. He needs the full year on him to do that.
He wants to know why Freeman is not on the
podcast. This guy.
Matt has 500 things to do.
Yeah.
When he doesn't want to talk to me.
Power hour is during finishes or right before.
Yeah, right before Marcus Freeman's press conference. And so that's why he's
and sometimes he's traveling back from a road game.
He's just really busy.
Yeah. So it's hard, but he gets it in the off season and we get him back and
and then we, have some fun with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As we should.
We always like making fun of Matt. So
we love Matt. Everybody loves Matt. All right. Well, I think that's it, folks. Hope you guys enjoyed that. I know Greg will be back tomorrow. Or I assume you will. I don't know.
Tomorrow morning. Morning after recap.
You usually have the recap, and look for Yama and I will have some stuff tomorrow, or actually Yama's will be up tonight. Mine will be up tomorrow. And thanks for watching, folks. And we'll have a lot more stuff to get ready for spring ball, that kind of stuff. All right. That's going to be it, guys.
All right.
Thanks for watching.
All right.